It's 7 o'clock, so I'd like to call the Noblesville Common Council meeting to order. Mr. Jensen, please stand, give us the pledge.
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Lees, could you do the roll call, please?
Mr. Boyce? Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Jensen?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. O'Connor? Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Present.
Ms. Wiles?
Present.
Mr. Ayers?
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for the January 10th, 2019 joint meeting with the Park Board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Same. Approval of the minutes for the January 15th, 2019 Common Council meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor? 8-0.
7-0, one abstention.
One abstention.
Yes, please.
Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. 8-0. Petition or comments by citizens who are present. I have none. If anyone would like to speak, there are cards to fill out right outside the door there. If they would hand those in to Ms. Lees, I would appreciate it. Mayor's report to council. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, members of council. Been a little busy, which is a good thing. Thank you. I would like to introduce Dave Herschel, who is here, is our new senior planner. David? And she had told me, and she had to write it down. But anyway. Life's too short not to have a few good times. David comes to us from Indianapolis, a lot of experience, so we're looking forward to having David on board as our new senior planner. Chris and I and many others attended an AIM meeting. If you remember, that's the new Indiana Cities and Towns. We hosted all the new representatives, both state representatives as well as state senators, sat with our own Chuck Goodrich, and then saw Mrs. Sparks as well, Senator Sparks as well. But just an opportunity to get to know them and them to know us and talk about some of the challenges that we had. We had a great visit with SMC. New Duke Energy president is in town and wants to meet with us, but also the big customers, and obviously SMC is. I got my exercise for the day. The $1.6 million building, we went from end to end, I think, almost. And then the other building, which you may know is perpendicular to that one, is 1 million square feet. That's going to be all production, all warehouse and shipping, and that'll be completed sometime here in the next few months, I believe. Did have a reception with the Justice Company and announcing what's happening at Promenade. Very exciting out that way. We had a firefighter swearing in ceremony. We swore in 6 new firefighters. There was also an award presentation at the Indiana Police Chiefs Association that I attended, and our own Officer of the Year was Mike Steffen. So we're very proud of what he did, as well as Megan and the whole crew, if you will, both the school crew and our crew and everyone else at the May 25th event. Then listen to a senator. Boy, that's a little early. Commissioner Dillinger. Be nice if it wasn't tongue-tied tonight. But he gave the State of the City speech. I thought he did a great job, and we are blessed to have such a great county. And we did on Saturday celebrate the life of John DeShiel. John was a longtime firefighter that passed away about a month or so ago. Next week, we're meeting with the new Senator Mike Braun and his staff, Senator Sparks as well. We have a business visit to Verdue Sciences. If you don't know them, they're out in the new Pleasant Street Business Park. Outstanding organization. We're happy to have their world headquarters here in Noblesville. With us tonight is Dina Firshman, Dina. I'd ask her to. She is the executive director of the Trinity Clinic, if you're not familiar. Anna Herschel is with her, but she's here to let us know about some of the new things that are happening at Trinity Clinic. She will tell you, I can tell you enough to be dangerous, but they are a tremendous benefit to the citizens within the county, but also particularly Noblesville. And they were also a benefactor of our Mayor's Charity Ball. So without further ado, Dina? Anna?
Thank you. Okay, I was told that I could only speak between 5 to 10 minutes, so I'm gonna do 5. I'm gonna shoot for 5, but that means you all need to strap on your seatbelts because it's gonna go fast, okay? This is Anna Kaiser. She is our community development. She's in charge of all the community development and is also working with our employer project. Okay, so in case you don't know us, we are the Trinity Free Clinic, and we provide free medical and dental care to the low-income workers of Hamilton County. And I wish I could scoop you all and take you with me to the clinic so you could see it, but since we can't do that right now, I'm gonna give you a quick tour. But I don't know if you can see it, because it's behind you.
Yeah, we
but
see
you
it.
can?
It's right here.
Oh, great, okay. So we have a really nice waiting room, and this is the boss's office. And then we have this is what our exam rooms look like. We have 6 exam rooms, and we have 6 dental operatories. We have our own pharmacy, and we're able to give our patients free medications as well as free labs. So that gives you an idea of what our capacity is. So real quick, the state of health insurance in Indiana, I could talk for 2 hours about that, but I won't. But bottom line is that our low-income workers have a really hard time getting insurance. Small businesses often cannot afford health insurance for their employees. Large businesses have to offer health insurance, but this is the situation. A full-time cashier at Walmart makes $17,000 a year. And her employer-provided insurance has a deductible of $5,500. That means that she would have to spend 32% of her income before she can use her insurance. So that's the kind of people that we're taking care of. This next slide just kind of gives you an idea of the type of people that we serve. A lot of retail, landscaping, a lot of the assistant teachers. And you know what we've noticed too? All of our school janitors and our school cafeteria workers and the folks that clean like this business, and I mean this building and the courthouse as well. So a lot of our manual laborers are our patients. This gives you a quick idea of the number of patients that we took care of last year in each one of our clinics. We're very lucky to have 11 specialties at the clinic. We have 377 volunteers. 55 of them are medical providers and 30 are dentists. So we're very fortunate. Dental is a huge need. Oh my goodness, dental care is so expensive. So we're glad that we can provide that. And this is just another view. This next slide gives you a snapshot of the cities that we have served and the number of visits that we provided by city. And Noblesville residents are our best customers. We have the biggest chunk of our population comes from Noblesville, followed very closely by Carmel. And just to give you an idea, the clinic spent about $200,000 to take care of Noblesville residents. However, the value that we were able to provide to Noblesville was more like $400,000 because our labor is free, our doctors are free, the building that we work in is donated to us by Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So it's great. We get to provide, basically for every dollar that the clinic gets, the clinic can provide $2.50 worth of care for patients. Okay, so this is a big initiative that I'm hoping you can help us with. We have served hundreds and hundreds of companies, of the employees of local companies, and we want to do more. That is an area that we like. We like the idea of helping the working poor. So within this new initiative, what we're doing is partnering with employers so that we can be proactive about their employees' health. Meaning, Anna, for example, just went to an employee meeting at the Ritz-Charles where she met with all the employees and explained to them the services that we have. Because we would much rather see a patient with hypertension before that patient ends up in the emergency room with a heart attack. And we'd rather see a patient that needs a cavity filled than a year later, a patient that has a broken tooth. So that's the first thing that we'd like to do. Second, we bring a bilingual patient a navigator. It is so incredibly complicated to navigate the healthcare system today that you need a professional. So we bring one, and then this person can work with each employee individually to see, okay, you don't qualify for HIP, but your children do, so here, let's get them. So you see that's what we do. And then the other thing is we'd like to have offer to these employees job fairs at the clinic. We have tons of people. Many of them are looking for work or they're in between jobs, so this is it's a good fit. And we've just started this, but we already have a couple of partners like Joe the Butcher and the Bridgewater Club and the Ritz-Charles and Hiddle Landscaping. Okay, so then you might be asking, okay, if we go out and we tell all employers, send your people to Trinity, how are we going to manage that capacity-wise? So at the same time as we're reaching out to employers, we are also increasing our capacity. For example, the IU School of Dentistry has been sending students to us for once a week since 2015. Starting in March, we will have them 2.5 times a week. Also, Marian University, for their School of Medicine, School of Osteopathy, they were sending they're doubling the number of students and faculty that they're sending over to take care of our patients. We've also made agreements with Purdue, Manchester, and Butler and Cedarville universities, and they provide us with our pharmacy interns, so we always have someone at the pharmacy. We also partnered with the Franciscan immunization team, and now we can provide immunizations to adults, which is great for folks that have to work outside and landscaping, lots of tetanus shots needed. Okay. And new partners, tomorrow we're having a meeting with the IU School of Medicine because they would like to send their residents to us, and the IU School of Dental Assisting. So we're growing, it's great. These are just a couple of new initiatives. Did you know that the Lions Club was providing eyeglasses to children with low-income children? Well, they stopped. So now all the school nurses are calling us. So we said, well, the need has presented itself, so now we're providing eye exams and eyeglasses for our children. Okay, so you're probably asking, well, how do we pay for all that? Half of our budget is in kind, donations that we get like in kind. For the biggest one is, of course, is the service that our volunteers provide with their service, our doctors, dentists, and so on. The other half is the cash. It's about $650,000. As you can see, 41% comes from just people's personal donations. 25% comes from all of the different government agencies. For example, the $20,000 that we received from the Mayor's Jubilee, and $5,000 additional to that we received from Noblesville from the Legacy Fund. So, we received more money from Noblesville than any other city mayor. Thank you. So one thing that you could do for us is come join us at one of our Lunch and Learn events. It's every month, the last Thursday of the month. It's strictly 1 hour. You come, you eat lunch while you hear about the clinic, you get a tour, and you're done. You're done. That's it. And if you can learn more about the clinic, then you can help us as you meet other people in the community. And then Anna has given you a list of all of the employers whose employees we've taken care of in the last couple of years. If you know somebody, help from one of those companies, connect them with us. And also, there are many other companies that are not on that list. Well, make the connection for us if you would. And finally, I hope that you can join us at our big fun gala event, and you will, of course, send free registrations to all the city council members. And that's it. Do you have any questions? Okay, not 5 minutes, but 8, still good.
You did
Thank
very
you.
well. Thank you, Dina, I appreciate it, and we appreciate all you do for our community.
Thank you. Thank you again. That is the end of my report. Do you have any questions of me? Yes, sir.
I think we have a mayor's breakfast for scouting coming up on February 12th. Would you want to add anything to that?
Well, thank you very much, sir. I do apologize. I don't know what's down here. Our annual mayor's breakfast for scouting is February 12th. Brian is in the past been on our committee. We are asking for sponsorship, a great opportunity, create Eagle Scouts like Mark Boyce, of course, and others. But we've, I don't know what that total is, but we've, last year was 60,000. So, and we do really well against the other cities within
the way you're saying it before.
County as well. We kind of lead the way with them, so we got to keep that up, that reputation up, so.
If anybody would
Again-
like to attend, they could call Michelle.
Call Michelle in our office, or the scout office, but we're handling all of that. So if anyone would like to attend and/or sponsor, please let us know. Thank you. And thank you for the reminder, Mr. President.
Thank you. See, I'd like to call Mr. Past President, Mr. Jensen, and Mr. Boyce to do a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield to Mr. Boyce. Thank you. I'd like to ask Lieutenant Barnes and Chief Kevin Jowett to come forward, please. So every year, Noblesville on the Common Council, based off of our past council, Alan Hines, I think, was the one who originally started it, started an award called the Stake in the Ground Award. And it's basically our employee of the year, but it's the council votes on someone who they think not only did just an excellent job, but someone who really put their stake in the ground saying they were going to be the best employee they could be. And we are lucky here in Noblesville. We always have a lot of really good people, and we had some great nominations this year, but one really stood at the top. Unfortunately, we live in a day where we have to worry about our children's safety, and last year, I don't have to say anything to remind everyone about May 25th and what happened at West Middle School. But when bad things happen, I always love to hear Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, always said that in the face of tragedy and scary things, you need to look to the helpers because they're the ones that are going in, and that there's always more helpers than there are people that are destroying things. And we certainly had our share here in Noblesville of helpers on that day, which thank God we did. And we've had a lot of people where I know many of you here in the council chambers tonight have honored those people, but tonight we're going to honor just one of them. Something about true heroes and helpers, they put aside their own personal well-being for the greater good of everyone else. And one person on May 25th didn't know about the safety of their son who went to West Middle School. I'm starting to get a little emotional, sorry. For more than an hour, he had no idea what was going on with his son, but yet he still represented Noblesville just incredibly on national TV, despite it better than I think almost anyone else could have. And I think it says an awful lot when you've got Mayor John Ditzler, you've got Chief Jowett, and Superintendent Police Doug Carter, who all trusted this person to stand on behalf of Noblesville and tell everyone what happened across the entire United States. And I don't think I can say it any better than the person who nominated, the person up here that nominated, Lieutenant Bruce Barnes, said, Lieutenant Barnes has done an exceptional job through many trying and heroic situations. During the May 25th school incident, Bruce provided the national media very precise information without compromising the integrity of the case. In every situation that he has had to provide information to the public and media, he has done so in a manner that portrays Noblesville in the best way possible. Bruce is one of the few people within our community that has truly helped portray Noblesville well on a completely national level. So with that, Mr. Jensen and I are very honored to be able to present you, Lieutenant Barnes, with this year's Stake in the Ground Award.
Do you want us to scoot in, or?
Can I say just a quick word?
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely honored, proud to receive this award, but I'd be remiss if I did not speak about this community and what they did that day for the citizens of Noblesville. And when I talk about the citizens, I talk about those kids and those parents that had students and in those schools that day. It's kind of hard for me to talk about it because it's truly on a personal level because my son was there that day. But I got to tell you, you could not pick a better group of people in this community, be it first responders, be it elected officials, be it the mayor, be it the private citizens, be it the business owners of this community that came forward that day and the days thereafter to support everybody. It's just been phenomenal. Makes me proud every day that I work for this agency, that I work for this city, and that more importantly, I'm a member of this community. So thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Lieutenant Barnes, we greatly appreciate your service to the community, and we always have lots of nominees, as Mr. Boyce said, and you stood out a little taller than the rest, but we have several qualified. Thank you for your service. Council committee reports. Mr. Taylor.
I have two. Noblesville Park and Recreations Board met on January 9th. The recreation report was that this was the first year that, I say they had taken 4 buses to go to Chicago. It was a very successful outing with more interested people for next year. We are in the first year, they were in the first year of an indoor concert. They received 15% of the ticket sales, which is money that they weren't not expected to receive, and it went well. Our net so far for this year from the recreation is $29,000. Pickleball is up, and we added 2 more times at Ivy Tech. The rec team at Ivy Tech is having a great start to the year. Director of Golf, the month of November, they were up $24,000 due to all the sales they did that month. We did most of our sales in November, but we did also do better in December than we did in 2017. Assistant Director, we have a lot of movement going on in staff hiring. We currently have received over 150 applications for our 4 job openings in the maintenance division. We plan to interview candidates starting the week of January 21st through 28th. The assistant golf superintendent position remains open. Curtis plans to post in other areas that will be seen by golf professionals. We have officially closed the Federal Hill Commons holiday events. The Ice Plaza final day was January 7th, 2019. As of Monday, January 7th, we brought in $80,839. The Christmas Cottage was open Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays from November 30th through December 23rd. We had a number of volunteers step up to assist with the management of the cottage, open hours, including a number of city employees, as well as the Noblesville Midday Rotary Club. The Christmas Cottage saw approximately 1,100 visitors. Under old business, the Forest Park Inn will be doing some remodeling this year, and Mr. Bennett presented the contract. The bids came back on Friday with the original budget that was approved for $200,000. The bid came through under the amount by Frederick's Construction, and the date for work to start obviously depends on the weather. Board to consider distribution of golf revenues. Prior to 2008, revenues was distributed between the golf fund and the capital general fund with an 85-15 split. Since the downturn of golf and the amount of revenue generated, it has been necessary to deposit all revenue into the golf fund to fund the operation as much as possible. So that will be moving forward again this year. They approved a lease contract for Noblesville United Soccer Club. And then next item was the board to consider pricing for proposal for the carousel and Tom Thumb Putt. They're going to do something a little different this year. They've had a number of contractors for many years manage the carousel, the Tom Thumb Putt, and the concessionary. This year, the Recreation Division will be taking it over to bring in more revenue. And then the team is also hoping to reintroduce birthday parties for the park with some special incentives for the recreation and the putt, maybe bring up a bracelet for activities between those two events. Board also considered a contract with Indy Trolley for 2019 service dates. Mr. Bennett presented the contract with the Indy Trolley for the 2019 services, and the trolley service was approved by the board. Board to consider contracts with Lehman & Lehman for master plan, impact fee plan, and alternative transportation plan. This is due to be done in 2019, and the last one done was in 2014. On to the next report.
I thought we limited you to 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. Hey, you send me to these things, I'm going to report.
Can you say Tom Thumb again, please?
Tom Thumb.
Okay.
Next report is on the Downtown District Committee. Topics of discussion was alley activation in the Leviston project. Judy Johnson stated she and Ms. McGill met to discuss the procedure for communicating downtown businesses and the best way to approach them. She stated they may have an outreach breakfast or a lunch, and then explain the benefits of alley activation and address the concerns. Ms. McGill will work with the Economic Development Department, Main Street, to engage the building owners and tenants. Ms. Johnson stated a proactive method of communication is being devised to keep downtown merchants informed concerning disruptions from construction. She stated their goal is to have communications in place by March, when the construction on Leviston is expected to begin. Mr. Head noted it is important to make sure both building owners and tenants receive the same information, and the committee agreed that responsive, consistent communication is needed. There was a talk about a release of liability for the property owners next to the alleys, but it will be presented to them after regular communication has been established and their questions have been answered. Also discussed at that time was the placement of utility nodes in the alleys where they will be under construction. This was something that was in the streetscape plan that was presented to us. So Patty Johnson offered to get quotes, and Mr. Peterson thinks that Ms. Alley's already got that information. So we will be moving forward with that to see how that can be done. Seminary Park, Mr. Wohlwald started a bid openings plan for March 1st, but the current partial federal government shutdown affects the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is known as HUD, which awards the grant that will fund approximately 2/3 of the project. If the government is open back up, that shouldn't be a problem. As of today, the government is open, but who knows what will happen in a few days. So our options may change on that, but we will have some activity on Seminary Park this summer. NDOT and Duke Energy amendments to the UDO for lights, that was a question that was brought up. Patty Johnson is working with Duke Energy for light poles that they own in the downtown district that are slightly different from the ones the city owns. There was some discussion that maybe the city buy the poles that we have and Duke maintain the maintenance. That discussion will continue. And Mr. Cook stated per NDOT, the current traffic signal poles could be painted. However, we were asking for pricing on more decorative poles as we try to enhance our downtown. Patty Johnson noted that Riverside Seminary is also in the downtown district and has street lights. We said we will also change those to black, and the fencing around the cemetery is already black. The last thing I have is on the pedestrian upgrades to Logan Street and State Road 19. Everybody knows that's under construction at this time, and I have I asked if the construction of the pedestrian bridge over the river would include room on the west side of State Road 19 for pedestrians to cross. Mr. Rodwald replied, yes, there will be. He stated with the overlook that is being constructed on the south side of the bridge, it will become the primary side for pedestrian traffic to cross. He explained this could improve safety since it is most dangerous for pedestrians to cross 19 on the north side of Logan Street where cars are turning right. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Sounds like you had a busy last 2 weeks. Ms. Wiles.
Mr. Ayer, I have the Finance Committee report, and much of our discussion at our most recent committee meeting was focused around the Campus Center project and the financing associated with that, and because that is a topic on our agenda, I'm not going to go into great detail, but I'll wait and let our presenters have that conversation, as well as another item that's on our agenda is budget adjustments regarding vehicle replacements as recommended by Enterprise Fleet Management. So my report this evening will be very brief since those items are on the agenda.
Thank you.
But the claims do come to you with a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
A positive
A
recommendation?
positive recommendation, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Wiles. So that will lead us, any other committee reports? That'll lead us to approval of claims.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been motioned to approve and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Previously discussed ordinances. Council will consider ordinance 010119, an ordinance amending ordinance 32-02-16 for the Embassy Suites Conference Center plan development regarding a text amendment for the creation of a parking lot on Lot 7 at 13765 Conference Center Drive South. Ms. Yeldon?
Good evening. As you may recall from the last meeting, the request this evening is for Lot 7, which is indicated here as the site, be used, or a parking lot be created to extend parking for both the Embassy Suites and the Conference Center. As you may recall, the original ordinance set that aside to be used for commercial uses. It is a request to amend that to establish, again, like I said, parking on Lot 7. They will meet all of the landscaping requirements as proposed by the ordinance. It is strictly just a use change. The Plan Commission did recommend approval and forwarded this item to you with a vote of 10 yes, 0 no.
Any questions, Ms. Yeldon? We have a motion?
Mr. President, I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 0101-19, ordinance amending ordinance 32-2-16 for the Embassy Suites Conference Center plan development.
Second that?
Been moved and seconded to approve 0101-19. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, roll call vote. Ms. Lees?
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. Jensen?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Ayer?
Aye.
8-0, the ordinance is adopted.
I'm going to ask Mr. Hampton to take care of the next ordinances. I have a conflict and will be abstaining from any discussion or votes regarding the project.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. This is item 020119, the council to consider ordinance 020119, an ordinance concerning the vacation of alley right-of-way for the north-south alley between 8th Street and 9th Street from the northern right-of-way line of Maple Avenue to the southern right-of-way line of the east-west alley between Maple Avenue and Connor Street. Ms. Yeldon.
This item was introduced at your last meeting. Again, this is a proposed vacation of the north-south alley that, again, is between Maple, 8th, 9th, and the east-west alley. It is the proposed site of the Levinson project. And I will ask if you have any questions.
This is a matter for public hearing, so is there a open it, okay. I'm opening the public hearing.
Mr. Vice President? Seeing no public coming forward to speak at the public hearing, I would like to make a motion to close that public hearing.
Second that.
A motion and a second to close the public hearing. We need a hand vote on this. All those in favor of that, raise your right hand. It passes. Now, is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
Mr. Vice President, I motion we approve previously discussed ordinance 02-01-19.
Second that.
Motioned and seconded. Ms. Lees?
Mr. Hampton, excuse me, Mr. Jensen.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
7-0, one abstention. The ordinance is adopted.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. President. Back to you.
Thank you. New ordinances for discussion. Council consider ordinance 0301-19, ordinance authorizing the city of Noblesville, Indiana to issue its taxable annual appropriation economic development revenue bonds, Series 2, 2019 Campus Center Project, and approve other actions in respect thereto. Mr. Murray?
Motion to introduce.
Second.
Good evening, President Ayer, members of council. For the record, my name is Andrew Murray. I'm with the Economic Development Department. For this evening, for introduction and first reading, is an ordinance necessary to move forward with bond financing. As you will recall from last year, specifically your November meeting, this council approved the form of a development agreement that would incentivize the development located at the northeast corner of 146th Street and Promise Road, known as the Campus Center. As this council is aware, a substantial portion of that subject real estate is currently and has been used for quite some time as a non-conforming auto salvage, auto storage business type use. Mr. Carter Jackson with Jackson Development, who is with us tonight in the gallery with his development team, he intends to redevelop the property into the campus center, which would include approximately 200,000 square feet of office flex space and approximately 80,000 square feet of commercial retail space. Pursuant to the development agreement, the city agreed to make bond proceeds available in order to reimburse the developer up to $6,750,000 towards development costs. Specifically, those proceeds will be made available and to reimburse the developer for 50% of the land acquisition costs, and the remaining portion of the bond proceeds would be made available at 50% of site improvement costs and/or building construction costs. As such, the ordinance before you would authorize the issuance of taxable annual appropriation economic development revenue bonds in order to meet our contractual obligation. As far as sizing of the bond, as you'll note in the ordinance as written, it is in the amount not to exceed $7.7 million. In reality, after working with our financial advisor, O.W. Cronin Associates, it appears that the size will be closer to $7 million, and this is the result of us choosing to fund pre-construction interest and funding a cash reserve fund with cash on hand instead of utilizing bond proceeds. As it relates to debt service, and I want to put a schedule in front of you. The debt service on these bonds, as you will note, they range from about approximately $400,000 early on, and they peak at approximately $1.4 million And as proposed, this debt service would be payable solely out of an annual appropriation request through the city budget process. And that request through that process would be from any legal general revenues of the city. So that means every year, the city budget would reflect and appropriate the respective total annual debt service amount for that collection year. However, there are two additional pledged revenue sources for payment on these bonds. Number one, TIF revenues, more specifically, it would be revenue that would be generated from the campus center development, and then it would be revenue that we would have on hand from the existing corporate campus west TIF revenue. And then the second pledged source that I mentioned would be for minimum taxpayer payments that the developer has agreed to in our development agreement. So just to point and reference and summarize that comment, this column, this is the excess corporate campus west TIF revenue, and these are the minimum taxpayer payments. This column is the, again, like I said, the annual debt service payment. As you can note from those two pledged revenue sources, we've got excellent bond coverage for this proposed issuance. And so to summarize that, it's not our expectation that this required annual appropriation that we'll do during the budget process, that we will have to tap those sources. Finally, in concluding this ordinance before you for first reading, you are approving the form of certain financing documents, including a bond purchase agreement, a trust indenture, and a financing agreement. These documents have been drafted by our bond counsel from Ice Miller and reviewed internally by Mr. Spalding, Mr. Howard, Cronin Associates, and myself. Procedurally speaking, this is again for introduction. It'll be back before you for second reading and adoption consideration at your February meeting. From now until then, we have meetings scheduled with the Redevelopment Commission and the Economic Development Commission for them to take their appropriate actions on this financing before, again, this proposal is back before you for adoption consideration. And then, of course, we'll continue to work closely and collaborate with this council's finance committee and keep them updated on any changes with this proposal. With that, I will conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Jensen.
Mr. Murray, your intellect isn't lost on me, but I've stared at this for 5 days, so I know enough to be a little bit dangerous here. Just want to land the plane quickly and say, so what you're telling us here is that the proposed debt service will be covered by the additional TIF revenue plus the taxpayer payments.
Right, correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to
And
wrap
that we
that
don't
up.
anticipate having to really utilize city revenue or city dollars to help pay
Based on
these
this
bond
schedule
payments.
and working with our financial advisor, we are confident that we will not have to tap
That's what I
that.
was ultimately trying to get at. Thank you, Ms. Wiles. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Murray? Mr. Howard is here also, and would be happy to take any questions anyone might have. I appreciate him. I know he's not feeling up to par today, but I appreciate him.
I'm feeling fine. I'm just glad we got somebody to do all these presentations. And he nailed everything. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, this will be a first reading, so we will see it again in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not quite as young as Mr. Jensen is. It takes me a minute to shuffle around here. Ordinance, council consider ordinance 0401-19, an ordinance for a change of sub-district within the corporate campus plan development district containing approximately 16 acres for the property north and east of the intersection of Promise Road and East 146th Street. Ms. Yelton?
Motion to introduce.
Second.
It's been moved and introduced. Ms. Yelton?
I didn't know if you would like to also talk, I'm going to talk kind of like about the next ordinance also, which is 5, which basically is the PD overlay of this project.
So
Council consider ordinance 0501-19, an ordinance amending the corporate campus plan development district, creating an overlay for the campus center plan development containing approximately 38 acres north and east of the intersection of Promise Road and East 146th Street.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
It's been moved and introduced. Ms. Yeldon?
Thank you. The item before you is a request, again, that includes 38 acres. It is currently a part of our corporate campus. It is at the northeast corner of Promise Road and East 146th Street. As many of you have driven by this location, this is pretty much what you see there today. We have an automobile salvage yard. We have automobile service and sales there at this location. With this proposed project, these particular uses would go away. The applicant has been working with staff and over a course of a few months now in regards to the development of this proposed project. The area in question, again, is the 38 acres, and this is a basically conceptual plan of what he is proposing to basically construct at this location. To talk about the first ordinance a little bit more particularly, the corporate campus is set out and it doesn't always follow. When we did the overlay on the corporate campus, it didn't always follow what I'm going to say are parcel lines. So it was kind of a bubble diagram, but it was a little bit more than a bubble diagram. So what this ordinance does is basically take this area known as Area A and actually defines it as being the area that commercial would be permitted in. Right now, it's probably maybe roughly 14 acres, so we're adding maybe 2.5 acres to this overall site. The rest of this, again, will basically remain as it currently is in the office flex area. So this proposal, again, sets aside approximately 16 acres of this area to be developed commercially and the other to be developed basically in an office flex manner. Many of the items that are allowed in the commercial are also, many of the uses allowed in commercial are also allowed in the office flex area as well. Again, any additional right-of-way that we would need for any reason would be dedicated at the time that we would do the platting process or the secondary plat on this. Some of their proposals include, this is an illustrative drawing of what the retail and the office complex would look like. One of the main things in here is no matter what these building materials ultimately become, it will be consistent throughout. So in other words, if we start out with these building materials in lot or in area A, which is the commercial, that same theme will be carried out through the office component of this particular development. We also have dealt with parking. Parking is an area that they basically have presented, I'm going to say, kind of their own parking standards. Their requirements would be a half a space for each 1,000 square feet of building size, and also the parking spaces would be constructed at 9 feet by 18 feet. Signage for this area, we have talked about signage in this area. We have proposed that basically signage in the area that they be permitted, what we would call 2 designation signs. Again, one of the signs would be located along 146th Street. The other sign would be basically located back here on Promise Road. The reason staff supported the 2 signs is based on the layout of the buildings here and the tenants in the buildings that would be along this area. It would be pretty hard for somebody driving along 146th Street to know exactly maybe what is back there. The second designation sign, again, for those traveling on Promise Road would also basically better identify these particular uses. A ground sign also would be a sign that would be permitted on Promise Road, and it could be a sign that could be an electronic sign. Wall signs, again, basically are permitted to have 3 items of information. Parking lot screening for this area. We have basically worked on the parking lot screening. If I can just find my landscaping. And it will consist of basically a screen wall and landscaping at the corner of 146 and Promise Road. So as you can see in the top portion here, there is basically landscaping, and then you will have a screen wall, and then again some landscaping and a screen wall. And based on that, it seemed to be a pretty good attempt to basically hide the parking that would be basically in, along this area. They have reduced basically, they will have 2 rows of parking here along the front, along 146th Street, and also parking behind these buildings and behind those buildings. Again, this item did come to you with a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission by a 9 yes, 0 against vote for adoption. With that, I will ask if you have any questions of staff. If not, the applicant and his representatives are present for any specific questions that you may have of them.
Any questions from Ms. Yeldon? Mr. Taylor?
Ms. Shelton, will this affect the airport operations at all?
Okay, anything that they do there, as far as the airport goes, there will be a certain building height that they will not be able to build above, but beyond that, there's not much restriction.
And my last question would be the design of the building. Do we have any say-so of how this building's designed?
As far as,
Architecture standards?
okay, the corporate campus does have, I'm going to say, architectural standards. Now, the architectural standards are very broad. So in other words, what it tells you is that if you're in this particular district, these are the materials that you can use. We don't tell you that you have to use 50% of it, let's say, has to be masonry. We don't say that. We just give you a list of materials that are allowed, and then we also list some that are prohibited. The materials that they have proposed here obviously meet those requirements.
Comment from the Plan Commission. There was not a lot of discussion. They really like it. It's an obvious improvement to the location. The language of the architecture to balance what's a flex building, 2-story or a taller building with the retail. They've done a great job of blending those materials in that language. And we're confident that the staff would keep the materials. And there was a little concern about, is it too much, is that block, is it brick? And it's hard to codify quality design, but we felt like this really met a high-quality standard for what's out there, and that it will be ferreted out by staff with what the rules are. So the Plan Commission was really happy with it.
Any other questions? Mr. Hampton?
On the signage again, is that signage only on the building itself, or is there provisions at all for signage out near the road within the landscape?
Obviously, they would be allowed to have signage on the building. And basically, they're also proposing what I'm going to call our 2 designation signs. Again, those designation signs would basically be located to identify the users that basically are along 146th Street. And then also another one that would identify, these users that are basically in these rear buildings. It's no different than, like, the Hamilton Town Center has their designation sign out there. Saxony has their designation sign. It is basically that, just identifying, those uses or those businesses that are located within that particular area.
Will we have drawings of those at some point, or?
We do not have drawings of those today.
Okay.
I think it's a little hard, and it's probably a little early to, come up with those drawings. as he gets more into this and actually begins to build the buildings, then he has a better feel of, the exact materials that are being used and those types of things. I would guess that if the council wanted to see that signage, they could ask them to come back.
I think the ordinance reads that the signage shall match the materials of the building and be in the same keeping with it. So they'll have the black and some brick, and it's in the keeping.
I mean, obviously, that's a standard, their sign has to basically carry the materials that are on the buildings out to the signage as well. The one thing that we did limit in the signage is that, these will have panels, and so, in other words, that the panels would be all a single color. So in other words, the business A is not going to have a green panel with red lettering, and business B is going to have a blue panel with black lettering. That's not going to happen. It is all going to be consistent throughout that entire sign.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Quick question, Ms. Yelton. The anticipated construction, it does state in the ordinance that finished or unfinished precast concrete panels shall be permitted building finish. Is that's what been proposed, or what are, I mean?
Okay, that's the materials those are some of the materials that they could use on this building.
Or they could use them exclusive, totally?
Okay, it would be.
No?
No, it's going to be a little hard for them to do that based on the illustrative elevations that they have brought us. I mean, if they come in with something that doesn't, is not similar and resembles what they have provided here, then staff would have no, issue to say, you need to go back to, to the council. I mean, again, those materials are materials that are already allowed to be used in the corporate campus area.
So this is basically a partially finished concrete panels and partially unfinished? Is that what I'm looking at?
I can't answer that because those are not identified. That might be a question you would want to ask the applicant and his representatives.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Harden, are you the representative?
Mr. Swafford, I'm not sure which one.
Preparing for the homework you were assigning. Give me 1 minute barely to be prepared. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a partner in the law firm of Fagery Baker Daniels, and I'm pleased to be here representing Carter Jackson, who just moved up to the second row. And Joyce Ann did a great job giving you the overview. Thank you for working with us on this project. We appreciate the leadership that the City Council has given on this project, which we've been working on since probably about this time last year. And thank you, Mayor and Mike Howard. I don't know if Judy Johnson is here somewhere, but if she's not, Andrew will let her know. We appreciate that. And Sarah and Joyce Ann and really the whole city's been working hard on this to bring it to this point. I think that a lot of times we talk about how a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think that's how this project has really unfolded. Hopefully be able to, anyone who's been by there to see what it looks like now and what the vision can be is pretty excited about it. And I continue to hear probably more about this project than I have any project I've worked on in 25 years. The people are excited about it, so we're really thankful to be here. The Planning Commission did vote unanimously to send this on with a favorable recommendation. There was no remonstrance, and we had a handful of comments and questions from the staff right before the Planning Commission that we announced that we worked all those out and gave them red line versions of that, and you have the final black line versions in your ordinance, so we're happy to answer any questions you have tonight. I think there was a question about the materials. I do believe that those the precast we were just talking about, Mr. Ayers, for the office flex building, that's what they were anticipating that you see on that. And I was handed a piece of paper that explains from the architect what those materials are. And so Sam Swafford is also here from our office, and Sam handed this to me. So Sam, if I don't say this correctly, you need to help this here. So for the business flex buildings, the wood plank look fiber cement plank rain screen system is the brown planks that you see on the building. Let me put these up here. Yeah, thank you. No. Well, that'll be even easier. So here is what's proposed right now by the architect. This is the painted precast. We've got some composite metal panels. Then the other colors on the building are all paint, a variety of different paint colors to provide contrast on various precast concrete panels. So that's what the wood plank look is, and the composite metal. Now we're carrying that metal look, the similar type of coloring scheme that you see into the commercial building, similar wood plank look, cast stone veneer on the So here again, we've got the fiber cement wood plank rain screen. We have EFIS, which would be a complementary color to what we just showed on the Office Flex, but it would be EFIS, composite metal panel continuing through here. And again, the wood plank rain screen throughout, and this is the cast stone veneer here. And while we don't have actual signs to be able to show you yet, because we're getting close to that, I've seen some draft examples of what those look like, because the intent is to be able to carry that same theme. So similar as you saw on some of the screen walls that we had, you'll see something similar to that, both in materials and design and look, for the various signs that we're going to have as well. Timing on the project, there'll be a lot of work between now and the end of February, but our hope and goal is that we'll be closing on the real estate by the end of February, closing on the bond proceeds by the end of February. Development activity, utility work happening. You'll see all the salvaged materials and vehicles removed, hopefully all by between now and the summer, and that the utilities will all be extended by that same time, with development activity happening right after that. So we're very excited about the project. Happy to answer any other questions that you have, and look forward to moving along. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Harden or Mr. Jackson? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I do have one thing that in this ordinance, I believe that they stated in both the ordinances that the Plan Commission vote was 10-0. The Plan Commission vote was actually 9-0.
Any other questions? We'll move on to the next and see that again in 2 weeks. Council consider ordinance 0601-19, an ordinance amending ordinance 99-12-05 for the Pleasant Street Commercial Park Plan Development for property located at 17230 Craft Court. Ms. Yelton?
Motion to introduce.
Second.
It's been moved and introduced. Ms. Yelton?
This item before you is basically an amendment to the Pleasant Street Commercial Park to allow Gaylor Electric to build a building on Lot 12 here that will basically mirror what they currently have on Lot 11. The ordinance, as it states today, reads that a primary facade includes public entrances, signage, and faces a dedicated street. Obviously, that dedicated street is Craft Court here. In 2007, when they constructed their building on Lot 11, they did come and request this same amendment for that particular lot. Staff proposes, so the ordinance further states that loading docks cannot be a part of the primary facade. So their building as proposed, basically facing Craft Court here, this is basically their primary facade. So loading docks cannot be on that area. Again, they are mirroring the building that they currently have on Lot 11, basically across the street. And this is basically what they have, on Lot 11 currently. Staff did basically note that the Plan Commission, again, did send this with a favorable recommendation for adoption by a 9-0 vote. Staff would like to propose an amendment to this ordinance, though. Basically, in Section 2, the very last sentence talks about overhead garage doors. Overhead garage doors should be changed to loading docks. So it actually, the last sentence would read, as per Exhibit 1, ordinance number 95-12-05 is hereby amended to permit the location of the loading docks on a primary facade. as per the definitions within the said ordinance. So we would ask that this ordinance be amended to change the words from overhead garage door to loading docks.
Any questions of Ms. Yeldon? We have a motion to amend.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved to amend and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. 8-0. Any other questions, Ms. Sheldon? And we will see you in 2 weeks. Again, it's been the Ms. Yeldon show tonight. Oh, yes.
She's still here.
I'm going to, again, ask Vice President Mr. Hampton to take care of the next ordinance. I do have and have had a conflict of interest in the project and will not be participating in any discussion or voting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council to consider ordinance 070119, an ordinance creating a downtown mixed-use overlay district for property north of Maple Street between 8th and 9th Streets and south of the east-west alley.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
Ms. Yelton.
Good evening again. This basically is the proposed site of the Levinson project. It is the one-half block area, again, that's located north of Maple between 8th and 9th and south of the alley, the east-west alley. In 2017, we adopted standards in the Unified Development Ordinance to create and overlay a mixed-use, a residential mixed-use overlay district as part of our UDO. This will be the first opportunity that we have had to basically establish a downtown mixed-use overlay district. The mixed-use overlay district is defined as any single-family, two-family, or multifamily dwelling units that would be located above a non-residential use in the same building. This particular building will house commercial as well as a parking garage, and then the upper units will be for dwellings. The purpose of the downtown mixed-use district is to support a more efficient use of land in the district. It encourages design of dwelling units and commercial uses that basically reside within the same building. And it utilizes this type of development to be infill for some existing areas. To date, it has been more than 100 years since we have had any residential constructed in the downtown, so this is quite an exciting project. I think the two latest projects that we have had include the Judicial Center, which obviously is non-residential, as well as City Hall. This proposal will include, again, parking garage, approximately 4 levels of parking garage, 85 residential units, and commercial uses on the ground floor. During the past several months, as you're aware, we have been working on this project, either through economic development, the administration and planning department, and engineering have been, all involved in this project. We'll talk a little bit about the architecture of the project. This is the latest proposal that we have for this building. This basically is the 9th Street view of the building. This is a view of the building looking through the alley. We also basically have areas of the building that I kind of would like to talk about where they've used basically, again, the darker area being a masonry brick. We have black window frames. The area up in here is fiber cement. We have a stone base along the bottom here, and then we have limestone bands. The elevation of this building basically will be consistent throughout all sides as far as materials go. They did meet with several, I'm going to say, outside groups in talking with about architecture, and basically have attempted to incorporate basically those same types of elements. So from this From some of the surrounding buildings, you can see that there is the diamond pattern that has been carried through. There is the limestone banding again. We've got the stone base along the bottom here. They have arched windows, which there are arched windows in this building, as well as the cornices that basically are in the same area, and the brick corbelling. So they have looked at the adjacent architectural and tried to incorporate it within this building. Landscaping-wise, obviously in the downtown, we don't require landscaping because, again, anything that's pretty much developed in the downtown is basically covers the entire area. They have proposed, though, to basically do what we are going to call planters adjacent to the building. So it will add greenery and basically spruce up the area. Again, this project does address goals and objectives of the comprehensive master plan as well as the downtown strategic plan, the housing study, and was a part of the Noblesville Now projects. Again, with this development, it could attract more living units to the downtown area. It also could begin to create a more vibrant nighttime atmosphere in the city of Noblesville's downtown. As many of you are aware, our surrounding communities are trying to emulate what we have here, but we truly have something special here, and we're not having to recreate it. Again, the public hearing was held at the Plan Commission. It was sent to the council with a favorable recommendation for adoption by a 9 yes, 0 no vote. And with that, I will ask if you have any questions of staff. If not, if you would like to hear more about the project, I'm sure Shelby can come up and give you more about this project.
Questions for Ms. Hilton?
I have a Mr. Vice President. I have a question, and it's not for Ms. Yelton, and it may not be able to be answered tonight, but read in the Indy Star that we've reduced some of the parking spaces in the final design. Mr. Bowen, is that correct? And then, here comes Mr. Cook, here we go.
Mr. Cook, okay.
So I was just curious about the financial impact on that. Obviously, we had some revenue projections there, and I just wasn't sure, like I said, I'm not sure if we have an answer tonight, but I was asked by some constituents, and I had the same question about how that would impact our revenues going forward.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks for helping.
Happy to answer any questions. I'm going to put this up here as well. It's a document that Ms. Hilton is handing out right now. We had an update from our parking consultant, Walker, on the current numbers as they stand, and then taking a look at the potential projected revenues from the hourly parking, as well as the permits. So initially, when the project was proposed, there were a total of 337 parking spaces. That was reduced down to 300 due to having to redesign parts of the building in order to accommodate that pedestrian access into the alley, as well as, I believe, just to be able to control the cost of the project as well. So when we bring the total parking spaces down to 300, you can see there, it's still a substantial gain for the downtown. We still have 130 net gain over that lot, and a 92% increase in downtown parking capacity for off-street public parking. In terms of the revenues that we would gain from the hourly parking and the permits, you can see in the column on the right, even looking at a revenue based on 40% occupancy, we would be pulling in about $174,000 compared to $188,000, which had been considered with the 337 spaces. So we still feel that the revenues that we'll bring in from this, even though we've had to reduce the number of parking spaces, will be minimal, and that will go into the parking fund to handle any types of maintenance costs.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Cook? I had one just on the permit and the hourly spaces. Is that a number that now is set, or is that still?
No, we would control that.
I know, but
yeah, so the 50 spaces that we felt for the permit, there are currently 35, and then there are 15 on a wait list. Now, some of the parking is going to go away because, the permits, I should say, would go away because the two previous occupants of those buildings on the site are no longer going to be parking there. But we felt like we had an opportunity here to increase the number of permit spaces for the businesses in the area. We can increase that or decrease that in the future, but we feel that's a good number to go with. And that still allows us plenty of spaces for hourly parking.
I think one thing that needs to be cleared up too is one reason why we lost a few parking spaces is because where we wanted the entrance coming in off of the alley towards the courthouse, which means they had to move some stuff to reduce the parking a little bit to get the entrance where we want it. And I will also say, as far as the $1 an hour in the parking, I hope that's up for debate. I know it's a concern of mine right off the bat. We'll see where it goes, but I think the council needs to have some say-so on that moving forward.
And that would be coming, well, actually, currently, I would say the ordinance that's on the books does allow for $1 an hour, but we would be requesting a revision to the parking ordinance, so the rate, the hourly rate would be part of that debate.
Rowan, you're here. Do you want to?
Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, members of council, mayor, and your staff, appreciate everything that you all have done to get us to this point. We're really proud of this. When I stood here in front of you all, I guess maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and said that we were going to listen to what folks wanted to see, and I think you've seen a pretty dramatic shift from where we started to now, and I just am proud of our team's collaboration with you all and your support as we've gotten here to this point. Happy to answer any questions you have. I was just going to say, comment again at the Planning Commission, there was not a lot of discussion other than it has come a long way from where it was 5 months ago. We only had one speaker, one public speaker, and they were very much in favor of it. They spoke, they live 3 blocks south of here and think it's going to increase their property value, and they were excited to see it. They raised the same concern that I raised in the last meeting. The 5th floor may still need some treatment. They've added a cornice that, when you walk along the street and you look up, that cornice kind of blocks the view and it gets shorter from a pedestrian view, and I think it's come a long way, and the Plan Commission was excited about it.
Johnson?
Shelby, just want to say, great job.
Thank you.
You really brought it along.
Thank you.
Oh, and I will share with you that when we talked about the planters and the landscaping, Mr. Taylor and I looked at each other and smiled because the subject of planters in the downtown district area has been a topic of discussion in our downtown district committee. So for future, we would like for all those planters to be black because it will be part of that downtown district and just having to make sure that it's all the same look.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Who's going to maintain the flowers in there? Is that going to be the city, or is that going to be the rent?
That's a great question. I don't know that we.
Aren't we hiring, aren't there 2 new people that are coming into the city? That
Yes. And that's both for the street department to help maintain the downtown streets and for cleanup and everything else. But traditionally, the Parks Department has been the one to maintain the flowers once they've been planted. Normally, the Economic Development Department helps to fund the planting of those. So it's a joint effort by a number of departments within the city.
Yeah, she's absolutely correct, and there will be 2 street department employees that were already budgeted for 2019 that would handle not only the maintenance of the garage itself, but the downtown central district, the sidewalks, clearing snow, day-to-day maintenance, trash removal, et cetera. So those staff members will be dedicated to the downtown and the garage and probably handling all the planners as well.
All right. Any more discussion on this? We will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Mr. Hare, back to you.
Thank you. We'll move on to miscellaneous number 1. Council consider resolution RC 3-19, a resolution of the Common Council approving an ordinance of the Noblesville Plan Commission. Mr. Murray.
Sorry.
Thank you, President Ayer, members of council. Andrew Murray, Economic Development Department for the record. Before you this evening is a resolution which is one of multiple statutory steps in creating a new economic development area and allocation area, or what is commonly referred to a TIF district, specifically for the campus center project to be located at the northeast corner of 146 and Promise Road, which we have discussed at length tonight. To give you a little background, the Noblesville Redevelopment Commission, they met last December and passed a couple declaratory resolutions. Number one, the first resolution removed certain parcels from the corporate campus west TIF area, which within this red bounded area, it is the blue, I think that's blue parcel or blue colored parcels. And then the second resolution took those parcels and created this new TIF area that is called the Central 146th Street. As you'll note, we also included the adjacent 3 remaining corners at this intersection, as we believe in incentivizing the campus center development, as well as cleaning up the area, that this will surely increase and spur future economic development opportunities at this intersection, and we want to be able to capture that TIF increment. Again, the purpose for this new TIF area is we're going to capture the TIF generated from the campus center and pledge those revenues towards the payment of the bonds that we discussed earlier in your meeting. Procedurally speaking, this comes to you being approved from the Redevelopment Commission and Plan Commission. It also has a favorable recommendation from this council's Finance Committee. While it goes to plan tonight, this proposal will go back to the Redevelopment Commission to be confirmed, and then we'll also properly advertise for the required public hearing. With that, I will stop there and request approval of this resolution tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Murray?
President,
Miles?
I would make a motion that we approve miscellaneous item number 1, council to consider resolution RC-3-19.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to pass resolution RC-3-19. This will be a hand vote. All those approving, raise your hand. Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. You've been almost as busy as Ms. Yelton this evening. Said you've been almost as busy as Ms. Yelton this evening. Now, Mr. Spalding will be next. Transfers, transfer number 1, council consider TA-01-19, an appropriation transfer funding non-budgeted vehicle replacements recommended by Enterprise Fleet Management. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, Controller, and the item you have before you is really, for all intents and purposes, more of a kind of technical adjustment as we continue to look toward ways to improve, modernize, professionalize the operations of the city. One of the things that we've done is brought on Enterprise Fleet Management to help us with managing the fleet of vehicles that the city acquires and maintains. And in part of that role, one of the things they do is they recommend to departments when is the best time, when's the right time to replace your vehicles, to try to get the highest trade-in value, that type of thing. And since we were working on developing that relationship last year while the budget was being developed, we had departments putting together a budget based on a vehicle replacement cycle that didn't have the benefit yet of Enterprise Fleet Management's recommendations. After Enterprise took a look at what the departments had, the vehicles they had on hand and what they were looking to need to do, they came up with some recommendations for several departments to replace now several vehicles that departments had not planned to replace in their 2019 budget. So what this transfer does is it allocates the money from the contingency reserve and the cumulative capital development fund to those appropriate departments to replace those vehicles in 2019 that Enterprise has recommended replace those now, even though those weren't contemplated for replacement at the time the budget was adopted. Now, it looks like an increase in those department budgets, it is technically, but the purpose for doing this is that the long-term life cycle costs of owning those vehicles will be less if Enterprise is correct. So that's the purpose of this transfer, and present that for the council's consideration.
Any questions of Mr. Spalding? Mr. Taylor?
I got two. Will the department head still be able to decide where these vehicles are replaced or not?
Absolutely. These are recommendations from Enterprise. They're not directives.
My last question would be, with the fleet management agreement, will that cut out any providers, local providers for vehicles in the future?
There's no requirement that it do that because, again, Enterprise is an advisor to us and they do what we say. And if we were to direct them to purchase specifically from, one specific provider, that's what they do, and they try to get the best price under that set of circumstances. But the more leeway you can give them, the more negotiating and leverage they have to try to find better prices for vehicles.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, Mr. Spalding? Do I have a motion?
President,
Ms. Wiles?
I would make a motion that we approve transfer number 1, TA-01-19.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to pass TA-01-19. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. Council comments. Mr. Hampton.
A lot of us read this afternoon, that Noblesville lost another great resident yesterday, Mr. Bob Arbuckle. He passed away Monday. I remember my wife taking our vacuums to him many years ago, and most of us, at least I do, remember him as the greatest dancer in Noblesville history. And just thoughts and prayers with his family and the great soul of Bob Arbuckle tonight. That's just what I want to say.
Thank you. He's been a fixture of the city for many years. So he will be missed. Any other comments? I have one, and I'd like to thank the mayor and Mr. Harrington, communication manager, and Mr. Todd Estes, one of our fire department division chiefs. They worked today pretty hard to put together an opening of a warming center out at the lodge at Forest Park. It'll be open this evening from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for those that are in need of some heat. We're going to have record cold weather out, and heat may be needed. So it'll be open this evening from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And then tomorrow, the Noblesville Township Trustee Community Center will be open during the day, and they'll have staff there to assist also. Tomorrow evening from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. The next morning, the lodge will be open again to help those that are in need. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Harrington, Mr. Estes, for coordinating that. I'm hoping no one needs that service, but if they do, it's great that opportunity is available in Noblesville. Any other comments?
I think there's several to do.
With that, we're going to motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.